So his name is Derek Hunter from Town Hall, but his Twitter handle is Reverend Dr. Jill Biden Derek Hunter. Thank you for joining us, Reverend Doctor.
Thank you, Grace. And yes, I earned that title at a community college, so I insist that I be called to that and no eye contact be made ever by staff.
Good on you, sir. I will abide by those rules. So, Derek, first I want to ask you about what happened yesterday at the Capitol. Obviously, it got completely out of hand, but you were tweeting a lot of the double standards that you noticed in the media, including I saw that you retweeted someone who put up two Vox articles side by side. One said, "Riots are destructive, dangerous, and scary, but can lead to serious social reforms." Everyone can guess when that article was printed. And the next one was, "Every person who forced their way into the Capitol should be arrested." Are you amazed at this complete double standard by the press?
No, I've been paying attention to it for far too long to be amazed by it anymore, and that's how sad it is that I'm numb to that. But it's amazing how these people who work in media live a life as though history started today and the internet doesn't exist. Like, nobody could just search and say, hey, did they ever contradict themselves? Right. You know they did. It's Chris Cuomo can be out there saying this is an outrage and clutching his pearls, and Anderson Cooper, born into one of the wealthiest families in human history, can say these stinky people will go back to Olive Garden and Holiday Inn tonight and not care and all of what they've done. There's a lack of oxygen in the bubble, I think, Grace. They've lived in the bubble so long that they've used up all their natural resources and they're running out of oxygen. And they frankly weren't all that smart to begin with. So the decline has been very quick.
And you also tweeted out, because the thing about the press and the politicians, which I agree with, is that they act like the internet doesn't exist. And they also act like our memories are so short. It used to be like, oh, that happened a year ago. Maybe they won't remember. Oh, now it's getting shorter and shorter. Like Chris Cuomo will get in a fight with someone because he left his home where he was supposed to be quarantined and get in a fight because he doesn't have his mask on. And then a week later will condemn Trump supporters who want to go outside on a beach in Florida. It really is. It's like it's getting smaller and smaller, their self-awareness.
Well, they're not very bright people to begin with, Grace. You've got to keep that in mind. But when you're dealing with someone like Chris Cuomo, and he staged his "I'm reemerging, I'm the butterfly emerging from the cocoon of my basement after surviving COVID," then you see in the papers, wait a second, just last weekend you almost got into a fist fight with a guy on a bike. And
a fat tire biker.
Right. It wasn't as though some spy saw it and reported third hand. He talked about it himself.
Yeah, he bragged about it.
We are aware of what you're going on. You can see how it was so easy to get Fredo out on that fishing boat because he's not smart.
Right.
So, yeah, look, let them do that. You give them enough. All you have to do is, there's a reason liberals want to shut up conservatives, and there's a reason conservatives want liberals to keep talking.
I totally agree. I have to ask you this, Derek, because I read the tweet from AOC that is not aging well, where she basically, said the point of protest is to make people uncomfortable. But what I did not realize, and we are going to talk more than just your Twitter, but your Twitter is phenomenal. What I did not realize is her comms director is trying to not only say that it's being, as the liberals always say, taken out of context, but I think she's trying to get it taken off Twitter. Can you explain that?
Well, her comms director is very upset that people are accurate. They're not even accurately quoting her. They're simply retweeting her with comment, which I could understand if somebody were taking a paragraph that she'd written and taking 3 words the way they do to conservatives all the time, putting scare quotes around it and framing it completely differently. But they're not doing that. They're simply retweeting what she actually said and then commenting on it themselves. And this is somehow taking it out of context. And they want it stopped. I'm actually surprised that the Twitter minions, the flying monkey army over there, hasn't done it yet, to be honest with you. But it's only in the left does accurately quoting somebody, not even accurately quoting, just showing somebody their own. It's like opening up a book to a certain page and saying, there, read this. That's what retweeting somebody is now somehow taking them out of context, and they're the victim.
And I'm sure soon Twitter will put one of those things on where when you go to retweet it, they'll say something like, it's been said that this is being taken out of context. You might want to find out the context here, and they'll give you a little link so you can be brainwashed by Twitter. But this is actually what she said. She said, we asked Twitter to stop the misinformation, but as we wait, you can help with the retweet. They're really doing the Lord's work with AOC and her campaign, Derek.
Meanwhile, the President of the United States tells the time. He just tweets the time, and there is a fact check. This is disputed. What is this, Greenwich Mean Time or Eastern Standard Time? We don't know. But our fact checkers are hot on the case.
Right.
If you wrote this up as fiction, your editor would look at you and go, well, this is unbelievable. You got to tone this down. This is unbelievable.
So, Derek, you wrote a column for Town Hall. You have so many great ones out there, but this one caught my eye. Democrat governors fail miserably on vaccine distribution. And you mention Ron DeSantis in here, and you also mention, just how differently these governors are treated based off whether it's Florida or New York. And I'm going to read this quote, and I'm going to retweet it for people so they can find it on my Twitter. And also you can follow Derek. Hold on, I just had your thing here, Derek. Tell me what it is. It's at Derek A. Hunter.
Derek.
But it will pop up as Reverend Dr. Jill Biden, Derek Hunter. But this is what Derek said in this column. He said, how have these governors dropped the ball? Where is the media? He goes on to say, the answer is pretty simple. It can't all be blamed on Donald Trump, on Republicans. If something does not meet that criteria, it might as well not exist. If people are being harmed, if people are dying, and it can't be used as a weapon against Republicans, they might as well not exist. I have felt this way, Derek, for so long, and that's why I'm so curious what happens post-Trump. Because when he's not there to kick around and he's not there to blame for everything, will they have to do some self-reflection into like the Andrew Cuomo's and, the Bill de Blasio's? Will anyone else get a little bit of a harder screening from the press?
Well, Bill de Blasio gets hard screening because he's universally loathed by the right and the left. Andrew Cuomo has been deified by the media, so he'll continue to skate. They can't turn on him. They had a choice at the beginning of the pandemic, to either deify. They needed an anti-Trump, somebody to frame him against. It was either Gavin Newsom in California or Andrew Cuomo in New York. Well, California was not hit early on very hard. So they couldn't really use him effectively, so they went with Andrew Cuomo. They showered him with an Emmy. They've showered him with a best-selling book. They've showered him with an award named after Ted Kennedy, ironically enough. But I don't know how you get the Ted Kennedy Award when you've killed tens of thousands. Ted Kennedy only killed one. Right. But they made him. They can't unmake him, at least not with a suitable substitute. So they can't go after him. Where do they go? You've got to remember the Bush years that led to the Obama years. It didn't matter what had happened, what caused it, or how long it had been going on, or how fresh it was. If it looked bad for Barack Obama, it was something he inherited. They also disembodied a lot of things. When the IRS scandal happened, you would have thought that the IRS was its own entity detached from the Obama administration. It was all, you can search stories and you'll have difficulty finding a deep dive on what Lois Lerner was doing that mentions that Lois Lerner was an employee of the Obama administration. It was the IRS is under fire for this. They have very skillful ways of separating who they want to protect from what they need protection from and smearing those they want to smear regardless of the facts at hand. So it will be 4 to 8 years of this is Trump's fault, no matter what happens. We're the mess we inherited. We're trying to clean it up. And
yeah, they're already kind of setting that up. There's a lot of columns that are like, Joe Biden has a tough road ahead of him. I'm like, not with you guys, he doesn't. You're going to ask him about, what flavor milkshake he has. But Derek, I wanted to ask you about this because you're the first person who explained it in a way that I started to understand what's happening here. Can you explain to people what is going on with Andrew Cuomo and the vaccines? He's threatening fines on hospitals if they don't administer the vaccines to exactly who he wants them to go out to. And it's creating a bigger problem than it's solving.
Well, he's threatening fines on hospitals and facilities if they don't administer it fast enough and if they administer it out of his woke slide rule decided order. It's very bizarre. He's really put them in between a rock and a hard place. You have to give it to first responders and people that he has deemed worthy, depending on how historically oppressed they are. But if you give it, if those people aren't lining up, if the appointments are not filling up, and you say, hey, while we've got the time, maybe we should be putting this in the arms of the people with the highest mortality rate and comorbidities, you can be fined $1 million. So you've got a choice between doing it by their rules, which people aren't lining up for, and getting fined $100,000, or violating the rules, actually adhering to the Hippocratic Oath, doing no harm, and helping human beings, and facing up to $1 million fine. It takes a special kind of stupid to get to that point, and you've got to take your hat off to Andrew Cuomo for that, because he seems to look at the people who survived his genocide in nursing homes as people he hasn't gotten to yet. And he's going to stick to it the same way a pit bull will not let go of the other end of a rope that you're trying to get to tie up your car or something. He is not letting it go. So there's something to be said for consistency. But as far as helping human beings, he's not very good at that.
And the press
So
only
when you've
really...
got your brother at CNN, you've got covered. You know, who's going to call him out on it? MSNBC isn't going to call him out on it. CNN isn't going to call him out on it. So he's set. He's safe.
Yeah, and all the press seems to care about is, you know, who he's dating, why he didn't go on a date with Chelsea Handler, and all that kind of good stuff. But my last thing I'll say is I agree with you in the sense that these Democrats, they're so good at fining people and at shutting businesses down and, you know, at creating restrictions and new laws and new mandates and lecturing people. But there doesn't seem to be any rush of helping people or understanding or joining together with maybe the private sector and figuring things out. That seems to be a real foreign concept to people like Andrew Cuomo.
That's what happened in Florida. Florida said, hey, we have an entire industry that delivers health care to people. Maybe some mid-level bureaucrat shouldn't be making these calls. Maybe it should be doctors. So they sent the vaccines to the various healthcare facilities around the country. Now they're even sending them to grocery stores where, you know, God forbid you go to where people are. And it's working fine. Yes, some seniors did camp out. Why? Because some hospitals said first come, first serve. So, you know, it's like stadium or festival seating at a concert. People want to get up front. They get there early. They wait around. Other places have set appointments. What is missing is that there is efficient distribution of the vaccine happening in Florida. People are being inoculated, whereas in New York City, because of Fredo's restrictions, they've only administered 25% of their available vaccines. This past Monday saw 2,000 fewer people in New York City vaccinated than the Monday before. How does that happen? Only government incompetence. And as for your question about why he didn't go out on a date with Chelsea Handler, two things. He's not that stupid, and he's not blind.
Well, the other thing I wanted to say here really quickly is you said if it does not meet the criteria, it might as well not exist. But also, if it looks good for a Republican, it might as well not exist, because Ron DeSantis is doing some good things. And I haven't heard any of that on the news. All that stuff you just told us about the hospitals and the healthcare rollouts, I haven't heard one thing about that.
Well, CNN tried to make a scandal. They accidentally reported on this story because their reporter got into an argument with Ron DeSantis because she wasn't allowed to finish her question.
Yeah, her speech.
Saw that video. But if you listened to it rather than pay attention to the self-martyrdom that was attempted there, you learned that he allowed local control because who knows better where the people who need it most are than the people who live there. Someone in Tallahassee couldn't tell you where to find a restaurant in Miami, let alone where to find people who need to be inoculated. So they took a state-level federalism approach to the administering of the vaccine. It's getting into the arms of the people who, A, need it, and B, want it, which is the tap and putt you should take before you bring out the wedge. And New York has gone in the exact opposite direction, despite a lack of interest, or at least early interest, in the vaccine of the people who have been approved by the governor to get it. And you look at that and you say, well, okay, they're not using it. How about give all this leftover food to the homeless? And they're saying, no, don't give any of this vaccine to anybody but them. And they'd rather seemingly let it go bad than use it. I understand why people are fleeing New York for Florida. I just hope that they realize that they're fleeing what they voted for and don't repeat that mistake.
Right, don't bring their voting habits with them.
Otherwise, in 10 years, there'll be a income tax in Florida, and everybody will have nice tan lines across their face from the masks they're still forced to wear.
Exactly. Guys, this is at Derek A. Hunter, who I'm talking to right now. He's from Town Hall. You have to check out his stuff. He also has a podcast. You can check out his whole bio at his Twitter. It's at Derek A. Hunter, and his name is Reverend Dr. Jill Biden Derek Hunter on his Twitter. Great guest, great writer, and he really knows how to tell it like it is. When we get back, we have the one and only Howie Carr. I cannot wait to talk to him. And don't go anywhere. We will be right back. This is the Grace Curley Show.
Follow Grace on Twitter at @G_Curley.